I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
The answer is I don't, nor would I necessarily want to. Those words, spoken decades ago, haunt King Charles to this very day.
She becomes my queen consort. I know she will bring to the demands of her new role.
And now, at 75 years old, he's finally ready to admit what we've all suspected for years. What if I told you that the wedding that captivated 750 million hearts, the fairy tale of the century, was built on a lie? What if the most famous royal romance in history was actually a tragedy waiting to unfold?
First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being. In good times and bad, she never lost her capacity to smile and laugh.
Behind the royal glamour, beneath the golden crown, there lay a painful secret that almost halted the ceremony.
As a mother of two small boys, I think we may have to find a secure way of helping our children.
What appeared to be a dream was actually a silent storm, one that haunted Princess Diana and trapped King Charles in a web of duty and heartbreak. For over 4 decades, the world has wondered, did Charles ever truly love Diana? Was their marriage doomed from the start? And what role did Camilla really play in this tragic love story? Now, decades later, King Charles has broken his silence. He's confirming what the world has long suspected. And his confession? It changes everything we thought we knew about the most famous royal marriage in history. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will shock you. This isn't just about a failed marriage. It's about duty versus desire, about a man who chose wrong, and the woman who paid the ultimate price. Before we dive in, I need you to subscribe and hit that bell icon, because what's unfolding inside the palace right now will shock you even more than today's story. Your participation in this journey is crucial, so let's uncover this truth together. Are you ready? Because this confession has been 43 years in the making. The sensitive prince. Nobody expected. Here's something most people don't know about King Charles. He was considered completely unfit to be king. That's right. The man who would eventually wear the crown was dismissed as too soft, too emotional, too sensitive to rule. Critics called him weak. The press mocked his tears. Even his own family questioned whether he had what it took to lead the monarchy. But what if I told you that everything you think you know about Charles is wrong? Let me take you back to his childhood, because that's where this story really begins. As a young boy, Charles was sent to Gordonstoun, one of Scotland's toughest boarding schools. His father, Prince Philip, the epitome of British masculinity, believed the harsh environment would toughen him up, make him into a proper king. Instead, it nearly destroyed him. Charles House faced relentless bullying. He was isolated, mocked, physically intimidated by older boys. And where were his parents during all of this? Emotionally absent, too busy with royal duties to notice their son was drowning. Night after night, young Charles cried himself to sleep in that cold dormitory, feeling utterly alone. He wrote desperate letters home, begging to leave. Elizabeth II rarely responded. His father told him to man up. This was the childhood that shaped the future king. A childhood of emotional neglect, of learning that feelings were weaknesses, that love was something you earned through achievement rather than something freely given. And here's the twist that nobody saw coming. That very sensitivity, the trait that made him a target, would eventually make him exceptional in ways his critics never imagined. When people said Charles was too weak for military service, he surprised everyone. He didn't just join the Royal Air Force, he excelled. His natural skill, determination, and refusal to give up impressed even his toughest instructors. One flight instructor later said Charles had a unique gift. He earned the Double Diamond Trophy for being the best pilot in his class. The supposedly weak prince was actually incredibly capable when given the chance to prove himself. But here's the problem. Even as Charles showed his bravery in the cockpit, his kind heart remained what some saw as a weakness. He desperately longed for the love and approval he'd never received as a child. He was constantly searching for someone to fill that emotional void left by his distant parents, someone to truly see him, someone to love him unconditionally. And that desperate need for love, it would lead him straight into the most complicated love triangle in royal history. Because while Charles was searching for love, he'd already found it, with exactly the wrong person. And that person was not Diana Spencer. Think about it. How would you turn out if your entire childhood was spent being told you're not good enough? If the people who should love you most kept you at arm's length? Would you make different choices than Charles did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And here's my question for you. Do you think Charles's sensitivity ultimately made him a better or worse king? Let me know below, and let's keep this discussion going. Because what happened next would shape not just Charles's life, but the entire future of the British monarchy. The meeting that changed history. Now, most people believe they know how Charles and Diana met. At some aristocratic party, a chance encounter that sparked a royal romance. But that's not the real story. Not even close. The truth is far more complicated, far more tragic, and involves a twist that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Picture this. It's 1977. Diana Spencer is just 16 years old, standing in a muddy field during a shooting party at her family's estate. She's young, vibrant, full of life, her infectious laugh carrying across the grounds. And Charles? He can't take his eyes off her. But here's the problem. Charles is already dating someone. Diana's older sister, Sarah. That's right. Before Diana, there was Sarah Spencer. And for months, Charles tried to forget about the young girl who'd captivated him in that muddy field. He focused on his relationship with Sarah, attending public events, playing the role of the royal couple. But fate had other plans. During another gathering at the Spencer family estate, Charles did something bold. He asked Diana for a private tour of the family's art gallery, away from prying eyes, away from her sister, away from the expectations of everyone around them. And in that quiet moment, something shifted. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Diana genuinely cared about his thoughts, laughed at his jokes, listened when he spoke. For the first time in his life, Charles felt truly seen by someone who wasn't trying to use him or change him. She saw the real Charles, not the prince, not the heir to the throne, just the man. The sensitive, artistic, misunderstood man who'd spent his entire life feeling like he didn't quite fit into his own family. But this hopeful moment, it wouldn't last, because what happened next shocked everyone and opened the door to a tragedy that would span decades. Sarah Spencer, sensing something brewing between Charles and her younger sister, made a stunning public move. In a magazine interview that blindsided everyone, she declared she wasn't in love with Charles and had no plans to marry him. Just like that, their relationship ended. Publicly, humiliatingly, in the press. But here's what Sarah didn't realize. Her bold statement opened the door for something far more complicated. Now, Charles could pursue the girl who'd been on his mind since that day in the muddy field. There was just one massive problem. Someone else still held Charles's heart, and her name was Camilla Parker Bowles. Her presence in Charles's life would complicate everything that was about to unfold, because while the world was watching Charles court the young, innocent Diana Spencer, Camilla remained the one who truly understood him, the one who made him laugh until his sides hurt, the one who listened to his deepest fears without judgment, the one who'd known him before the crown weighed so heavily on his head. And that connection? It had never really ended. Can you imagine being Diana, caught in a budding romance with a prince while your own sister's shadow looms over you, and another woman still holds his heart? What would you have done in her position? Would you have seen the warning signs? Share your thoughts in the comments, and smash that like button if you're hooked on this royal drama. Because what's coming next reveals the love triangle that would destroy them all. The Camilla factor, love's greatest enemy. Here's the secret the royal family never wanted you to know. Charles and Camilla were never really over each other. Their relationship had begun years before Diana ever entered the picture. And despite marriages, children, and royal duties, that connection never truly faded. Let me take you back to 1970, when Charles first met Camilla Shand at a polo match. She was funny, confident, unpretentious, everything the women in Charles's aristocratic circle were not. Their chemistry was instant. Friends described them as completely natural together, finishing each other's sentences, sharing private jokes. Camilla didn't treat Charles like a prince. She treated him like a man, and Charles, he fell deeply in love. But there was a problem. Camilla wasn't considered suitable for a future king. She wasn't a virgin, she'd had previous relationships, and she came from a less prestigious aristocratic background. The royal family made it clear she would never be queen. So Charles did what he thought was his duty. He left for an 8-month Royal Navy deployment, expecting Camilla to wait for him. Instead, she married Andrew Parker Bowles, a cavalry officer, just weeks after Charles left. Was it revenge? Self-preservation? A way to force Charles's hand? We'll never know. But what we do know is that their love didn't end with that marriage. It went underground, becoming the secret that would eventually destroy Diana. Fast forward to 1980. Charles is under enormous pressure to find a suitable bride. He's 32 years old, practically ancient for royal marriage standards. The press is relentless, his family is pushing him, and every woman he dates is scrutinized as a potential queen. That's when Diana Spencer re-enters his life. She's now 19 years old, beautiful, aristocratic, and most importantly, a virgin with a spotless reputation. She checked every box the royal family required. But here's what nobody tells you. Charles proposed to Diana after just 6 months of dating. 6 months. They barely knew each other. And during those 6 months, they'd only seen each other about a dozen times. Why the rush? Because the palace needed an heir. Because the press was circling. Because duty demanded it. When Charles proposed, Diana was ecstatic. She believed she'd won the ultimate prize, the heart of the future king. She thought their love story was just beginning. What she didn't realize, was that another woman still claimed a significant piece of her prince's heart. And the first crack in Diana's fairy tale, it appeared just days before the wedding. Diana discovered that Charles had ordered a special gift for Camilla, a beautiful bracelet engraved with their pet names, Gladys and Fred, their private joke, their secret language, their connection that transcended his upcoming marriage. Diana was absolutely devastated. Here she was, preparing for what should have been the happiest day of her life, and her future husband was buying intimate jewelry for his ex-girlfriend. Diana's friends later revealed that she was in complete emotional turmoil. She desperately wanted to call off the wedding in that moment. She felt trapped, humiliated, heartbroken, even before she walked down the aisle. But the pressure was crushing. Invitations had been sent to royalty worldwide. Security was arranged for hundreds of thousands of spectators. The entire British economy was counting on the tourism boost from the royal wedding. Both families convinced Diana she was just experiencing normal pre-wedding jitters. That every bride gets nervous. That Charles's gift to Camilla was just a polite farewell gesture, a way to officially close that chapter of his life. They assured her that once they were married, once Charles had his queen, Camilla would fade into the background, become a distant memory. They couldn't have been more wrong, because what happened the night before the wedding would shatter Diana's world completely, and it would reveal a truth so devastating that it would haunt her for the rest of her tragically short life. What do you think? Should Diana have trusted her instincts and called off the wedding? Or was she trapped by circumstances beyond her control? Let me know in the comments below. Because what Charles admitted to Diana that night would change everything. The night before, Charles's confession. It's July 28, 1981, the night before one of the most watched weddings in history. Diana Spencer should be radiating happiness, surrounded by friends and family, dreaming about her future as the Princess of Wales, imagining the magical ceremony that awaits her tomorrow. Instead, she's alone in her room at Clarence House, crying hysterically after hearing something that would scar her soul forever. What happened that night has been kept quiet for decades, but Diana's closest friends finally revealed the truth, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. Charles visited Diana that evening. In that private moment, away from the cameras and courtiers, he told her something so devastating that Diana would later call it the worst night of my life. Sources close to Diana revealed that Charles, possibly overcome by guilt or last-minute panic, admitted he didn't love her, at least not the way she loved him. Let that sink in. The night before their wedding, Charles told his 20-year-old bride-to-be that he didn't truly love her. But it gets worse, so much worse. Reports say that Charles actually cried that night, but not tears of joy or anticipation, tears of sadness about leaving Camilla behind. Friends later recounted that Charles shed tears for the woman he truly loved but couldn't marry, the woman who understood him completely but could never wear the crown. Imagine being Diana in that moment, just 20 years old, about to marry in front of 750 million people worldwide, and discovering that your prince's heart belongs to someone else entirely. The timing was cruelly calculated, too late to cancel without causing an international scandal, too early in their relationship for Diana to have the strength to walk away. Diana's response was heartbreakingly simple. She asked Charles the most obvious question: "Why are you going through with this marriage if you don't love me?" And his answer? It encapsulates everything wrong with the royal family's approach to marriage, duty, and human emotion. Charles said that duty came before happiness, that the monarchy needed heirs, that love was a luxury that future kings simply couldn't afford. He essentially told Diana that she was functional, a suitable vessel for royal children, an appropriate partner for public appearances, but not the love of his life. Can you imagine hearing that? Can you picture the devastation on young Diana's face? That night, Diana faced an impossible choice. She could run away, creating the scandal of the century by leaving Charles at the altar. The humiliation would be enormous, but at least she'd be free. Or she could go through with the wedding, hoping, praying that Charles would eventually learn to love her the way she already loved him. Diana chose hope. She chose to believe that love could grow, that duty could transform into devotion, that time would heal the wounds of that terrible night. This decision would cost her everything, her happiness, her mental health, and ultimately, many would argue, her life. But in that moment, with the weight of the world's expectations crushing down on her, Diana walked forward. She chose to become a princess, believing that perhaps, just perhaps, she could win her prince's heart. The ceremony, the next day, would reveal to anyone paying attention that this fairy tale had serious cracks, and the signs, they were impossible to ignore. What would you have done? Would you have married Charles knowing he loved someone else?
What was your instant impression, both of you? What did you think about Lady Diana?
Well, I remember thinking what a very jolly and amusing and attractive 16-year-old she was.
Or would you have walked away? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know, because what happened at that wedding exposed the truth to 750 million witnesses. The wedding that fooled the world. July 29th, 1981, St. Paul's Cathedral. 750 million people watching worldwide. It should have been the happiest day of Diana's life. Instead, it became a masterclass in royal pretense, and if you knew what to look for, the warning signs were everywhere. Let me show you what millions of people missed. The ceremony itself was stunning. Diana's dress with its 25-foot train, the horse-drawn carriage, the pomp and circumstance. But beneath the spectacle, there was a different story unfolding. First, Diana surprised everyone during her vows. When it came time to promise to obey Charles, she deliberately left out that word. She said, love, comfort, honor, but not obey. At the time, people thought it was a charming modern touch. But looking back, it was Diana's subtle rebellion, a quiet statement that she wouldn't be controlled, even as she felt trapped. Then came Charles's vows, and he made a telling mistake. Instead of saying, all my worldly goods, Charles said, all thy goods. He got the pronouns backward, essentially promising to give Diana her own possessions rather than sharing his. A simple slip of the tongue? Maybe. Or maybe it was Charles's subconscious revealing his reluctance to fully commit, to truly merge his life with hers. But the most revealing moment came on the famous balcony of Buckingham Palace. The world saw that iconic kiss and thought it was romantic, spontaneous, a genuine moment of affection between newlyweds. But watch it again closely. Diana leans in eagerly, her eyes shining with hope and love. And Charles? He pulls back slightly. The kiss is awkward, almost reluctant. You can see the imbalance in their body language. Diana reaching, Charles retreating. That kiss told the whole story in a single moment. Throughout the reception, photographers captured images that would only make sense years later. Diana's smile fading when she thought no one was watching, the sadness in her eyes during quiet moments, the way she constantly sought Charles's attention while he seemed distant and distracted. One guest later recalled seeing Diana at the reception, practically glowing with hope, trying to engage Charles in conversation. But Charles kept looking over her shoulder, as if searching for someone else, or perhaps thinking about someone else. The cruel irony? The world absolutely adored Diana that day. Her beauty, her grace, her her shy smile. She became an instant icon. Young girls everywhere dreamed of their own fairy tale romance. But for Charles and Diana, the fairy tale ended before it truly began. As they left for their honeymoon on the royal yacht Britannia, they were already playing roles, already pretending, already trapped in a marriage that satisfied everyone except the two people actually in it. And that pretense? It would prove impossible to maintain. Have you ever watched that wedding footage? Did you notice these warning signs? Share your observations in the comments. I'd love to hear what stood out to you. Because what happened during their honeymoon would set the tone for years of misery to come. The marriage unravels. Diana's fight. The honeymoon was supposed to be a time for Charles and Diana to finally connect, to build intimacy away from royal pressures, to start their marriage on solid ground. Instead, it marked the beginning of Diana's desperate, heartbreaking fight to save a marriage that was doomed from the start. During their first joint interview as newlyweds, a reporter asked if they were in love. Diana's response was immediate and heartfelt. "Of course we are." But Charles? His answer would become infamous. "Whatever love means, whatever love means." Think about that for a second. Your new husband, sitting right beside you, tells the world that he doesn't even understand what love is. The humiliation Diana must have felt in that moment broadcast to millions of people. But Diana didn't give up. She couldn't. She was already pregnant with Prince William, and she desperately wanted to make this marriage work. She threw herself into royal duties, hoping that if she could be the perfect princess, Charles might eventually fall in love with her. She believed that giving him sons, securing the line of succession, would earn his devotion. She was so tragically wrong. Because here's what Diana didn't fully understand yet. Charles had never fully ended his relationship with Camilla. Throughout the courtship, throughout the engagement, throughout the honeymoon, Camilla was always there, in the background, in his thoughts, on the phone. The breaking point came at a party, a few months into the marriage. Diana, finally gathering her courage, confronted Camilla directly. She said something like, "I know what's going on between you and Charles." And Camilla's response? It was devastating in its casual cruelty. "You've got everything you could possibly want. You've got all the men in the world falling in love with you. You've got 2 beautiful children. What more could you want?" Translation: you have the title, the palace, the children. Why do you need his love too? That moment shattered something fundamental in Diana. She realized she was in a marriage where her emotional needs were seen as unreasonable, where love was considered optional, where she was expected to be grateful for scraps of attention. The final crushing blow came when private phone calls between Charles and Camilla were leaked to the press. The infamous Camilla-gate tapes revealed intimate conversations, pet names, and yes, that mortifying discussion that became known as Tampon-gate. The content was so embarrassing, so inappropriate, that even Charles's most loyal supporters struggled to defend him. And for Diana, it was the ultimate betrayal, proof that while she'd been trying to be a dutiful wife, Charles had been emotionally and physically intimate with Camilla all along. This realization sent Diana into the darkest period of her life. She developed bulimia, a eating disorder that she would battle for years. She made attempts to harm herself, desperate cries for help in a palace that seemed determined to ignore her suffering. She later revealed, "I was just so desperate to do something that would make them sit up and notice me, but they just thought I was being hysterical." Diana felt utterly alone, trapped in a public role that demanded constant smiles while privately drowning in a loveless marriage. The whole world adored her, but the one person whose love she craved, her husband, was emotionally absent, his heart belonging to another woman. And as the truth about their troubled marriage was about to explode into public view, it would threaten to change the monarchy forever. What do you think kept Diana going during these dark years? Her children? Her sense of duty? Her hope that Charles might change? Tell me in the comments. Because what Charles would admit next shocked the entire world. The admission that changed everything. By the early 1990s, rumors about Charles and Camilla were impossible to ignore. The tabloids were relentless. Diana's visible unhappiness was captured in every photograph. The royal family faced a credibility crisis unlike anything since the abdication of Edward VIII. And Charles? He made a decision that would change everything. In 1994, Charles sat down for a televised interview with Jonathan Dimbleby. And in that interview, broadcast to millions, Charles did something unprecedented. He admitted to adultery. Let me repeat that. The future King of England publicly admitted to being unfaithful to his wife. When asked directly if he had tried to be faithful to Diana, Charles answered, "Yes, until it became irretrievably broken down, us both having tried." There it was, a confession, an admission, a public acknowledgement of what everyone had suspected for years. But here's what made it even more painful for Diana. Charles didn't apologize. He didn't express regret for the pain he'd caused. He didn't acknowledge the years Diana had spent trying to save their marriage while he maintained his relationship with Camilla. Instead, Charles framed his affair as the natural result of an unhappy marriage. He essentially suggested that Diana's inadequacies as a wife had driven him into Camilla's arms. The victim had somehow become the villain in Charles's narrative. Diana felt utterly betrayed, not just by the infidelity itself, but by the public humiliation of it all. She told friends that Charles had made her feel like she was the problem, that she was difficult, unstolfarm, unlovable. One friend later revealed Diana's response. "He's made me look like the mad woman, the one who couldn't hold his interest. But what he won't admit is that he never gave me a fair chance. His heart was always with her." This confession marked the beginning of the end for their marriage. Within months, Charles and Diana announced their formal separation. The fairy tale was officially over. But Diana wasn't done telling her story. In 1995, she gave her own bombshell interview to BBC's Panorama. And in that interview, she said something that would become one of the most quoted lines in royal history. "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded."
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
3 people, 1 marriage. Diana named the problem that the palace had spent years trying to hide. Camilla had never left the relationship. Diana also revealed the emotional toll of being in a loveless marriage. She spoke about her bulimia, her desperation, her loneliness. She showed the world that behind the princess facade was a woman in profound pain. The public's response was overwhelming. Sympathy for Diana surged. Anger at Charles reached new heights. The monarchy's approval ratings plummeted. By 1996, Queen Elizabeth II had seen enough. She wrote letters to both Charles and Diana, essentially ordering them to divorce. The fairy tale that had captivated 750 million people ended not with love, but with a formal decree from the reigning monarch. Diana lost her Royal Highness title. She received a settlement of £17 million, and she gained the freedom she'd been seeking for over a decade. But that freedom would be tragically short-lived. Just 1 year later, Diana would die in that horrific car crash in Paris, leaving behind 2 heartbroken sons and a world that had finally come to understand her struggle. And Charles? He would spend decades living with the consequences of his choices, decades wondering what might have been if he'd been honest from the start, if he'd followed his heart rather than his duty, or perhaps if he'd fully committed to duty rather than trying to have it both ways. That interview was a bombshell that changed everything. What do you think? Was Charles brave to admit his affair, or was it cruel to do so publicly? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to smash that like button if you're learning things about the royals you never knew before. Because now we arrive at the present day, and Charles's latest, most revealing admission yet. Charles's recent regrets at 75. Now, at 75 years old, King Charles III sits on the throne he waited his entire life to inherit. He's finally married to the woman he's always loved. Camilla is now queen consort, by his side at every royal engagement. He should be satisfied, vindicated, content. But according to those closest to him, Charles is haunted by profound regret. Friends and palace insiders reveal that Charles deeply regrets the pain he caused Princess Diana. He wishes he had handled things differently. He recognizes now, perhaps too late, that he put his own desires before Diana's well-being. One longtime friend of Charles shared, "He knows that what he did to Diana was wrong. He knows he should have been honest from the start. He knows she deserved better." After marrying Camilla in 2005, Charles has transformed from what many saw as a selfish, weak husband into what appears to be a genuinely loving, attentive partner. He's publicly affectionate with Camilla in ways he never was with Diana. He lights up when she enters a room. He seems, finally, at peace. But here's the haunting question. Could he have had that happiness without destroying Diana first? Charles reportedly wonders about Diana's alternate life. What might have happened if he'd been true to his feelings from the start? If he'd had the courage to defy the palace and marry Camilla originally, allowing Diana to find someone who could love her completely? Or if he'd made the opposite choice, if he'd fully committed to Diana, ended all contact with Camilla, and genuinely tried to build a life with the woman he'd promised to cherish? Instead, Charles tried to have it both ways. He married the appropriate princess while maintaining his true love relationship in secret, and that decision destroyed lives. This raises the critical question: was Charles a victim of circumstance, forced into an arranged marriage by archaic royal protocols? Or did he make selfish choices that prioritized his happiness over everyone else's? The truth is probably somewhere in between. Yes, Charles faced enormous pressure to marry someone suitable. Yes, the palace restricted his options. Yes, the rules about who could become queen were rigid and unforgiving. But Charles also made choices. He chose to propose to Diana knowing he didn't love her. he chose to continue his relationship with Camilla throughout his marriage. He chose deception over honesty, comfort over courage, and the cost of those choices, it was devastating. Charles lived in a gilded cage of duty and expectation. Diana experienced years of heartbreak, public humiliation, and emotional trauma. And Camilla spent decades as the other woman, vilified by the public, unable to openly be with the man she loved. Everyone suffered. Charles from obligation, Diana from rejection, Camilla from exile. The public watched as Diana handled her pain with remarkable grace and strength. They saw her transform from a shy teenager into a confident woman who used her platform to champion causes like AIDS research, landmine removal, and homelessness.
Right. As you can see, they've been working their way here, and they've excavated out, and they've uncovered a mine.
Diana showed the world that even in the midst of personal tragedy, you could choose kindness, choose service, choose to make a difference. Her legacy reminds us that duty doesn't have to mean sacrificing your humanity, that you can be authentic and royal, that compassion matters more than protocol. And now, looking at Charles's reign, we have to wonder, has he learned those lessons? Does he truly understand what Diana tried to teach him? Outro. So, here we are, 43 years after that famous wedding, and King Charles has finally admitted what we all suspected. He never truly loved Diana the way a husband should love his wife. His recent reflections reveal a man grappling with the consequences of choices made decades ago. A man who got what he always wanted, the crown and Camilla, but at a cost he's only now beginning to fully comprehend. Charles's admission doesn't change the past. It doesn't heal Diana's wounds or bring her back to the sons who still miss her. But it does offer something important: acknowledgement. After years of palace spin and careful PR, Charles is finally being honest about what really happened. And perhaps that honesty, however delayed, is the first step toward healing the wounds that have fractured the royal family for generations. The real question is, can we forgive him? Some will argue that Charles was a product of his time, trapped by archaic rules and expectations, that he did the best he could within an impossible system. Others will say that everyone has choices, and Charles chose wrong repeatedly, that Diana deserved better, and his belated regrets don't excuse the years of pain he caused. What do you think? Is Charles truly sorry, or is it too late for regrets? Can a monarch who built his happiness on someone else's heartbreak ever truly be forgiven? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below. And here's my question for you. If you were in Diana's position, could you forgive Charles? Or would the betrayal be too deep? This story reminds us that beneath the crowns and the palaces, behind the royal protocol and ancient traditions, there are real people making real choices, choices that ripple through time and shape not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone around them. Charles got his throne. He got his true love, but at what cost? Remember to like this video, share it with anyone fascinated by royal history, and subscribe for more revelations about the monarchy's hidden truths. Because trust me, there are more secrets behind those palace walls than you can imagine. The crown survives, but the hearts beneath it? They're far more fragile than any of us realized. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and never forget, every fairy tale has a darker side.